They believed they had broken her, thinking that twisting her arm hard enough in front of everyone would make her give up, that the right torque would crush her under pressure. After all, what good is a SEAL with just one functioning arm? But Lieutenant Commander Noelle Hart didn't break. She didn't even flinch. She kept her tone level, strapped her arm tight, and that same night walked into the red-lit reflex bay, where she dismantled 4 Marines using only her left hand. Before we get into how one SEAL reminded an entire base what real control looks like, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on. Drop a comment telling us where you're tuning in from and stay with us, because this isn't a story about pain, it's about precision. When discipline spoke, rubber soles squealed over polished floors. The sharp echo bouncing off the walls of Ravenfield Base's Joint SEAL Evaluation Facility. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, while the mix of disinfectant and sweat clung to the air. Lieutenant Commander Noelle Hart stood at the head of a formation of 30 recruits. Half Marines, half SEALs, waiting in silence. Her right arm rested in a rigid brace mostly concealed under her jacket, subtle enough to overlook at first glance. But no one missed it. Sergeant Dean Rourke was the first to notice, and the loudest, arms crossed by the wall, flanked by 3 Marines taller than her, all grinning like a show was promised. Noelle spoke evenly. "Today's focus is close-quarters leverage mechanics," she said. "It's not about strength, but using angles to redirect force." One Marine shifted, another coughed to hide a laugh. Rourke stepped forward. "That's one way to teach fighting," he said for everyone to hear. "Another is actually fighting." Heads turned. Noelle didn't. "Some of us," he continued, "come from units where combat isn't theory. You don't redirect in an alley. You drop them fast." Noelle blinked once. Those who depend only on brute strength often find opponents who don't need to match it to win. Rourke's smirk twisted. "Then prove it." The air changed. No theatrics, just tension settling. Marines straightened, SEAL trainees went still. Noelle tilted her head slightly. "Volunteers?" Rourke gestured at his men. "Show her what real pressure feels like." She nodded once. "Protocol. No sustained holds. No head strikes, rotating pairs." Rourke only shrugged. "If she can handle it," he muttered. And the Marines stepped onto the mat, one after another. The first lunged with a textbook over-the-shoulder grab, but Noelle slipped low, pivoted, and used his own arm bend to roll him flat on the floor in half a second. He groaned, silent from shock more than pain. The second came in quicker, locking around her midsection, but she spun on her left foot, hooked his ankle, and sent him down with a clean shoulder drop and knee press. The third hesitated. She didn't. One step, one shift, flawless, quiet, efficient, no showmanship. Rourke's jaw tightened, arms still folded, but his stance betrayed him. Noelle adjusted her brace and faced the room. "That concludes the demonstration." The SEAL recruits straightened. The Marines stayed mute. She didn't smirk, didn't gloat. She just stepped off the mat as calm as she'd entered. Rourke didn't follow, but his voice carried behind her. "She'll learn what pressure really feels like soon enough." His tone stayed even, but the pride was bruised. By sundown, the story had grown legs. In the mess hall, between trays of watery chili, the whispers spread like wildfire. "A SEAL instructor with a brace flattened 3 Marines in 2 minutes, someone muttered near the coffee. "She didn't throw them," another said. "She placed them like chess pieces." The words weren't admiring. They were edged with friction. In the corner booth, Rourke leaned back with his boots up, arms wide, laughter sharp and defensive, trying to kill the rumor before it rooted. "That wasn't a fight," he scoffed. "That was a demo, rehearsed falls." His Marines laughed, but not like before. One averted his gaze when a SEAL trainee walked past. "She teaches combat like a yoga class," Bayan joked, tapping his fork, then hesitated. "But she did drop all three." The words hung too long, and Rourke's glare cut them off. "You think she could do that under real pressure? Full contact, no safety nets? She's brittle. Walks around like that half-healed arm makes her some hero. If it weren't for protocol, she'd be out cold." Meanwhile, across the compound, in the stillness of the operations wing, Lieutenant Commander Noelle Hart stood at her desk. Her training log lay open, plain, methodical, names, timestamps, compliance. But in the margins, her notes told another story. Marine posture, unstable. Lead foot, overcommitted. Second attacker favors right side grabs, vulnerable on pivot. Third hesitates under pressure, freezes predictably. No emotion, just analysis. A knock sounded against the glass wall. "Commander." Elias Ward stood there, coffee in hand, brows raised. "You stirred up some turbulence today." "Wasn't my goal," she replied flatly. "I know," he said, pausing, reading her expression before continuing. They were already talking. Half the base whispered that she'd humiliated the Marines. The rest claimed it was just luck. Noelle didn't react. "Luck's not my metric," she said evenly. "Patterns are." Ward studied her for a moment longer than needed, then gave a quiet nod. "Keep the brace on, and maybe hold off on making any more statements this week, verbal or physical." She returned to her desk. Rourke's name didn't appear in her logs. Not yet. Her silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. The next afternoon began with the rhythmic thump of boots on rubber mats, drills that were supposed to stay routine. Lieutenant Commander Noelle Hart stood at the edge of the sparring bay, clipboard under her left arm, calling rotation changes. "Standard endurance circuit," she called out. "Marines versus SEALs, mixed pairs, controlled and timed." It was meant to stay safe. But Sergeant Dean Rourke stood at the perimeter, arms folded, eyes locked on her. He'd been quiet since yesterday, but quiet was never his nature. It was the kind of silence that builds pressure. When the third cycle ended, his voice cut through the air. "Commander Hart, how about a demonstration? Unless the SEAL manual forbids testing instructors." Nervous laughter followed. Noelle looked up from her notes. "Demonstrations are scheduled, Sergeant," he smirked. "Then call this an unscheduled adaptability drill." Before she could reply, he was already on the mat. "Unnecessary," she warned. "It's joint training, ma'am," he said mockingly. "We adapt, remember." The room fell still. Even the hum of the air vents seemed to fade. Noelle stepped forward, unclipped her pen, and set the clipboard aside. "Protocol first," she said quietly. "Contact limits?" "I know the limits," he interrupted. She exhaled slowly. "Then keep them." They faced each other. He was heavier, broader, built from brute strength and boxing habits. She moved with calm precision, centered, fluid, coiled like a spring. He opened with a testing shove meant to gauge distance. She slipped left, redirected his momentum, and sent him stumbling. A faint murmur of approval rippled through the onlookers. Rourke reset, grin tightening. "Lucky angle," he muttered, lunging again, faster. Noelle dropped low, caught his arm, pivoted her hip, and flipped him cleanly over her shoulder and smooth, technical, controlled. He hit the mat hard. Something flashed in his eyes. He rose too fast, too angry. His next move wasn't part of any training manual. He seized her wrist, stepped in, and twisted, not to demonstrate skill, but to humiliate, to make her scream in front of everyone. A sharp crack split the silence. Not a scream, a bone. The entire room froze mid-breath. Noelle's expression didn't waver. Her body stiffened, then steadied. The brace had softened the blow, but not enough. The old fracture line had split again. She didn't clutch it, didn't flinch, only met his eyes. Calm and unreadable. "Drill concluded," she said evenly. A medic rushed forward, but she raised her good hand. "Negative. No medical assistance required." Her tone carried the weight of command. Rourke took a step back, masking panic with false confusion. "Ma'am, that was standard contact pressure. Marine procedure." No one answered. Even his own recruits stood motionless, faces pale under the fluorescent lights. Even his own recruit stood frozen, unsure whether to move or breathe. Noelle bent down, picked up her clipboard with her left hand, and turned without a word. She walked off the mat as if nothing had happened. Every step deliberate, posture unbroken. Behind her, Rourke remained standing in a silence so heavy it seemed to hum. Everyone knew what they had witnessed, but no one dared voice it. "Commander, it was an accident," he called after her, but the door had already closed, leaving only the flickering buzz of fluorescent lights that seemed to sense something irreversible had just occurred. By nightfall, the story had split in two. Some claimed it was a mistake, an accident during training. Others whispered that Sergeant Rourke had waited for his chance, timed it until her guard was down, then twisted until something snapped. That sound, the sharp crack, echoed through the barracks like a ghost story. No one admitted hearing it first, but everyone remembered it. In the Marine wing, Rourke sat in the locker corridor, sleeves rolled, spinning his version for anyone who'd listen. "She didn't tap out," he said with a grin. "That's on her." One recruit shifted uneasily. "But that wrist lock, part of the sequence, right?" Rourke snapped back. "Pressure test. Exactly the way the SEALs like it. She wanted realism, she got it." Nobody agreed, nobody challenged him. Across the compound, the SEALs stayed silent, not out of loyalty, but containment. Near the equipment cage, 3 trainees formed a quiet triangle. Petty Officer Calvin Brooks broke the silence first. "You know what unit she was with before this?" The others shook their heads. "DevGru Task Unit Raptor," he said quietly. "She was part of the team that pulled 6 hostages out of Kandahar in 2019, 11-hour firefight, took shrapnel to the shoulder, kept moving." One of them frowned. "That's not confirmed." Brooks didn't flinch. "I've seen the scar, and I've seen what happens when someone mistakes her for just another instructor." The third recruit glanced toward the admin wing. "You think she's going to let this go?" Brooks gave a dry laugh. "She already hasn't. She just hasn't shown them yet." As the footsteps of passing Marines faded, he added one last line. "Rourke thinks he broke her arm. What he really did was give her a reason to reset the standard." Back in the Marine wing, the mood had shifted. Thicker now, uneasy. Corporal Vance sat on his bunk, staring at the wraps on his bruised knuckles. His rackmate, Jensen, was tying his boots. "You really think that was an accident?" Vance didn't answer immediately, just studied his hands. "I think he wanted to prove a point," he said finally. "And I think she let him, because proving him wrong later will sting a lot worse." Jensen tightened the last lace. "You sound like you're on her side now." "I'm on the side that doesn't end up flat on a mat in front of everyone," Vance said, standing and grabbing his cover. Before leaving, he paused at the door. You saw his face after that lock. That wasn't training. That was personal. Jensen said nothing. He didn't have to. They both knew. Lieutenant Commander Noel Hart didn't go to medical, didn't file a report, didn't even return to her quarters. Instead, at 1841 hours, she sent a single request to Commander Elias Ward. Subject: Reflex Evaluation Authorization. Request: Restricted Use Clearance for Reflex Bay, 2100 hours. Scope: Adaptive Demonstration. No exemptions requested. No mention of the arm, no complaint. Just procedure. Ward read it in silence from his office. He didn't need to ask questions. He'd seen Rourke's move from the upper gallery, close enough to know it was illegal, far enough to know no one else would speak. He signed, approved, closed the file. In the junior officer lounge, quiet murmurs drifted. You think she'll report him? She won't. Why not? Because she doesn't have to. Even the Marines who'd laughed yesterday were subdued now. One rolled his shoulder, remembering how she'd dropped him with one arm. At 1927 hours, Sergeant Dean Rourke sat in the comms room, scrolling through training logs when his tablet chimed. Official notification. His name stood at the top. Reflex evaluation. Mandatory participation. Time, 2100 hours. Location, Reflex Bay. Instructor, LCDR Hart. Rourke read the notice twice before letting out a short, dry laugh that didn't sound convincing, even to him. One of his Marines glanced up. What is it? Rourke turned the screen so they could see. She's running a drill tonight. Wants us there. The Marine's face changed. Not quite fear, but close enough. All of us? All of us, Rourke confirmed. Silence filled the room. He set the tablet down harder than he intended. It's just another demo, he muttered. Probably wants to lecture us about protocol or some crap. But his voice had lost its bite. The Marine rose slowly. You sure about that? Rourke didn't reply, because he wasn't. They kept glancing at the clock. 2100 was coming fast. Too fast, and though none of them said it, they all wondered the same thing. What kind of demonstration do you schedule after someone breaks your arm? The rehab wing was nearly empty by 2040 hours. The only sounds the faint hum of the HVC and the squeak of rubber soles against polished floors. No chatter, no music, just silence sharp enough to focus the mind. Lieutenant Commander Noel Hart stood alone beneath a flickering ceiling light that blinked every 7th second. Her uniform jacket lay folded on a bench. Her right arm was wrapped tight in a reinforced compression sling, pressed immobile against her side. She didn't twitch. Barefoot, perfectly balanced, she faced a padded wall flanked by 2 stripped aluminum training dummies, one marked with a taped X at the clavicle, the other bearing a sandbag across its midsection, a leg target. Noel exhaled once and began to move. Left pivot, elbow drive, hip hinge, drop, rise. Each motion was surgical, clean, efficient, measured. No wasted movement, no sound beyond her breath. Sweat gathered at her temples, but the sling stayed still. The injured arm hung silent. She turned toward the mirror bolted to the pillar and paused. Her left side flowed smoothly now, dominant where it once lagged. Not by accident. A memory flickered. Week 6 of Bud S., cold surf pounding, her right hand too swollen to close. An instructor kneeling beside her, voice cutting through wind and pain. Your body doesn't decide what works. Command does. Comfort doesn't matter. Clarity does. In the present, she whispered back, clarity does. Not motivation, calibration. She stepped again. Left leg sweep, shin trap, reverse stance. Then she turned her back to the dummy, dropped her weight, and pulled it down soundlessly. Reset. Dummy. Mat. Stance. She crossed to the bench, opened her field log, and wrote, Reflex demonstration. Time, 2100. Format, controlled correction, limits, none, notes, medical intervention to be denied unless ordered by base command. She set down the pen. A metallic clack echoed across the bay as the doors unlocked. Noelle rolled her sleeve down over the sling, zipped her jacket to regulation height, and walked into the red-lit corridor. Alone, composed, and steady. The next move wasn't adjustment. It was correction. Outside, the reflex bay loomed like a gray bunker behind the drone hangars, lit only by a single halogen floodlight. Inside, the air felt charged, alive, waiting. Red emergency lights pulsed faintly in the corners, painting the walls in a heartbeat rhythm. The floor was bare rubber, the walls tilted at odd angles of padded foam to disorient anyone who stepped inside. Exactly at 2100, the heavy door hissed open. Sergeant Dean Rourke entered first, flanked by his 3 Marines. Their faces carried the same uneasy confusion, caught somewhere between forced confidence and creeping dread, unsure if this was punishment, procedure, or something far worse. Up above, Commander Elias Ward stood in the upper gallery, tablet in hand. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He didn't need to say a word. Rourke looked up, tension edging his voice. Just confirming, sir, this is authorized? Ward gave one slow nod. You asked for a branch control demonstration. This is it. Before Rourke could respond, the main door opened again. Lieutenant Commander Noelle Hart stepped inside. No fanfare, no sound beyond the deliberate rhythm of her boots on the mat. Her right arm was now locked tight in a black immobilizing sling, firmer and more intentional than the brace she'd worn before. Her left hand was bare, boots soft-soled, no visible weapons. Rourke barked a laugh that came out strained. You sure you're cleared to fight, ma'am? Noelle didn't even look at him. I'm cleared to demonstrate correction. Ward's voice came through the comm, steady and professional. Reflex bay live. No gear, no exits. 1 round per contact. Lieutenant Commander Hart versus Marine Unit Alpha. The Marines shifted in uneasy silence. Noelle gave a short nod. Understood. She moved forward, slow and centered, focus locked on the trio ahead. Rourke smirked. 3-on-1 again? You remember how that went last time? She didn't answer, because the first Marine was already charging. Alpha 1 lunged with a front foot grab, textbook form. Noelle slipped left, caught his elbow with her good arm, and redirected the momentum with surgical precision. He hit the mat before realizing what had happened. Alpha 1, neutralized. Ward's voice echoed from above, flat, factual. The second Marine rushed harder, arms wide for a body lock. Noelle pivoted back, swept his ankle, and drove her left elbow clean across his collarbone. Alpha 2, neutralized. The third Marine hesitated, eyes darting between her and the others. She moved first. One spin, one low kick behind the knee. He dropped with a grunt, tried to recover, but her boot was already pressing his wrist to the floor. Alpha 3 neutralized. Rourke's smirk disappeared. She hadn't thrown a punch, hadn't used her right arm once. He stepped forward. My turn. Noelle didn't blink. Then fix your posture. He charged, boots pounding, arms swinging wide. She didn't meet him head on. She ducked beneath his swing, turned, and let his own power carry him past. Her left leg swept his base clean, sending his weight off balance. He hit the mat hard. Her knee pressed into his ribs, her elbow locked his shoulder. Her right arm stayed motionless, unneeded. She leaned close, voice calm, almost cold. "You wanted proof," she said. "Consider it logged." She stood, adjusted her sling, and stepped back. Rourke stayed where he was, chest heaving, pride shattered. His Marines sat frozen, eyes wide, silence thick. From above, Ward's voice cut through the tension. "Drill complete. Results recorded. Directive closed." No one clapped. No one spoke. Only the low hum of red emergency lights filled the room. Noelle turned and walked out without a glance behind her. The 4 Marines remained where they were, stunned by the quiet authority of a woman who dismantled them using one arm. Later, the medical report would confirm it. Her injury couldn't have been supported by bracing alone. Rourke opened his mouth, then shut it again, pale under the harsh lights. Ward's tone stayed flat, unwavering. "The angle of the break matches a maneuver banned under Clause 12B of the Interbranch Combat Code. You signed that clause. So did every man on that mat." Silence. Rourke's eyes flicked toward his Marines, but none would look back. Ward shifted his gaze to Noelle. "Lieutenant Commander Hart, did you file a report?" "No, sir." "Why not?" "Because it didn't need attention," she said calmly. "It needed adjustment." Ward's nod was slow, deliberate. "So it did. You scheduled a corrective drill. She didn't respond. She didn't need to." Ward's eyes turned back to Rourke. "The problem here isn't the injury. It's the intent. You used a banned maneuver, hid behind protocol to justify it, and only stopped when you were on the floor." He closed the file with a final, sharp click. "Effective immediately. You're suspended from all instructional duties. A formal reprimand will be filed with both branch liaisons. Ravenfield Base no longer recognizes your authority to lead joint operations." Rourke's jaw tensed, but he stayed silent. The air was too heavy for excuses. Ward shifted his gaze toward Noelle. "You'll receive a commendation for adaptive tactical control under duress. Your drill log's already been sent to Command North for review." Noelle inclined her head slightly. "No commendation necessary. Just forward the next roster." Ward allowed the faintest trace of a smile. "You've just reminded this base what control looks like." She said nothing. Rourke stared at his hands, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the floor. One of the Marines behind him shifted in quiet shame. Ward stood. "This session is closed." For a few moments, no one moved. Then chairs scraped softly as they filed out. Noelle rose last, composed as ever. She didn't carry weight. She was weight. The door opened, light spilling across the polished floor, and she walked out without a sound. In that moment, authority changed hands. Not through shouting, not through punishment, but through precision. The corridor outside felt colder now. The polished concrete stretched in both directions, lined with schedule boards and empty metal benches. Except they weren't empty anymore. A handful of officers stood waiting in silence, watching her pass, each of them understanding, without a word, who now set the standard. Lieutenant Commander Noelle Hart stepped through the doorway without a hint of hesitation. Her sling was secured, her jacket zipped to regulation height, every fold sharp and immaculate. No one saluted, not out of disrespect, but because no one dared to break the silence that followed what had just happened. She passed 2 Marine instructors, neither from Rourke's unit, but both had witnessed her dismantle 4 men with a single working arm. They straightened instinctively as she walked by. One gave the faintest nod. She didn't return it, not from pride, but focus. At the corridor's end, Sergeant Rourke sat alone on a bench. No tablet, no confidence. Just a man stripped down to the aftermath of his own choices. His hands hung clasped between his knees, elbows resting forward, eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't look up. She didn't pause or slow, but as she passed, his voice cracked softly through the quiet. I didn't think it would snap like that. Her pace didn't falter, but her reply came calm and steady. You didn't think I'd keep going either. And then she was gone. Commander Ward stood farther down near the elevator bank, arms folded, waiting. As she approached, he didn't move. You didn't just win, he said. She stopped for a fraction of a second. You recalibrated the line, he finished. Noelle turned her head slightly, meeting his gaze for a moment before adjusting her sling with her left hand. Discipline did, she said, and kept walking. The elevator doors slid open, swallowing the echo of her boots. No applause, no chatter, only silence, reshaping itself into something new. By 0630, the sun had broken over Ravenfield Base, casting a clean line of gold across the gravel parade grounds. Long shadows stretched behind moving boots. The atmosphere had shifted. Less noise, fewer jokes. The kind of calm born not from rest, but from something recently corrected. Lieutenant Commander Noelle Hart walked the outer perimeter trail alone. Posture perfect, gaze forward, hands clasped behind her back. No medals, no fanfare, just quiet precision in motion. Those who passed her, those who had seen what she'd done, straightened unconsciously. Not from fear, but respect. A young Marine, new to Ravenfield and unaware of her reputation a week earlier, gave a hesitant nod from across the path. Noelle didn't slow, but acknowledged him with a brief glance, a silent signal that said, "You're learning." From the barracks walkway, Petty Officer Calvin Brooks caught up, jogging easily before matching her stride. "Morning, Commander," she nodded. "Brooks." He gestured toward the chow hall behind them. "Quiet morning, even the officers. They'll find their voices again," she said evenly. "Hopefully they'll use them better next time." Brooks smirked. "Guess they finally learned the first rule." Her eyes shifted slightly. "Which one?" "Never touch a seal," he said with a grin. She didn't laugh, but a soft breath through her nose hinted at a smile. They walked together until the path split near the West Range. Brooks peeled off. She continued alone toward the administrative block. Near the personnel gate, Captain Rourke sat on a bench, uniform still pressed, duffel bag at his feet, waiting, dismissed but not yet gone. His eyes stayed down as she passed, his shoulders sagging under the weight of realization. She didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't offer comfort or condemnation. He wasn't owed either. Outside the instructor wing, 2 new candidates crossed paths with her, a pair of freshly cleared officers headed for joint training. They didn't know her story yet, but they stopped talking as she passed, the air around her thick with the silence that followed like gravity. Noelle entered the staff corridor, paused at the wall-mounted roster, and crossed off the morning's field module with one smooth stroke. Done. No speech, no debrief, just presence. The kind that already taught enough. Across Ravenfield Base, conversations had shifted, not from fear but understanding. They'd learned that discipline isn't passivity, it's precision, the art of knowing exactly when to act and when to hold still. Would you keep fighting if someone broke your arm mid-mission? Do you think discipline hits harder than retaliation when the whole base is watching? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them all. If this story reminded you what real strength looks like, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon on so you never miss the next mission. And share this video with someone who still believes silence means surrender. Our next operation is already waiting on your screen. Go watch it now. This is Captain Joe's Stories.